Hey everyone, in this video I am going to go over the tasks for week 2. Just give a little overview. So I have a week 2 announcement on what we're doing, and in course content you also have the week 2 folder. So the reading this week is Beowulf. You are not reading the entire epic, you're reading about 2/3 of it. So just read until line 1798, basically after the second celebration at Heorot. That's where you're going to stop. So there's a whole other chapter involving a dragon that, of course, if you would like to read it, it's good. It's not the most famous part of Beowulf, but it's interesting. However, for the assignments, I want you to focus just on this section of Beowulf that involves his fight against Grendel and Grendel's mother. Okay, so that includes, that's what the quizzes are going to be on for this week, and the discussion question, I want you to choose a question from that assignment. Next week, we'll be doing a response, your first written response, and that will be on Beowulf, but it will need to be on the section that I've assigned. So I have in the folder some introductory notes and ideas, a few links that you might find useful. This one here, a New Modern Translation recited, you might find interesting or a little amusing, but the Haney translation is the one that I expect you to know and use for the discussion question and for the response next week. Okay, and so I have an audiobook translation of that. If you would like to hear it, or at least just hear part of it, it's, a lot of these works, have a very oral component to them, meaning that, they are sort of written to be recited. And so, these audiobooks can give you a sense of what Beowulf sounds like. Okay, the reading quiz. We have 2 reading quizzes. Just like last week, the reading quiz, you have 15 minutes for each one. You can use your book, you can use your notes, but there's but you can only take it once. All right, so you have to take it within that 15-minute time frame. So make sure that you read thoroughly, and you're ready to take the quiz before you start that. All right, so last thing I want to discuss is the discussion board. All right, because we're going to do a lot of these, and I use the same basic format each time. Okay, there's I mix it up a little bit, but essentially the discussion question format involves your choosing a quotation from the text. All right, from the assigned reading, introducing that quotation with a complete sentence that ends with a colon, okay, giving a citation, and then asking a discussion question about your quotation. All right, so in this example here, and I've also have an example in the discussion board itself for you to look at. Before Beowulf fights with Grendel, he remarkably declares that by not using weapons, he is allowing God to determine the victor, colon. All right, so notice that this could be a sentence on its own. We're ending it with a colon and then a quotation. And may the divine Lord, in his wisdom, grant the glory of victory to whichever side he sees fit. All right, and then there's a citation. All right, I'm going to say more about the citation in a minute. The question is, Beowulf's laying down his weapons an act of pride or humility? In your answer, explain what this passage implies about the relationship between God's will and the arts of war. Okay, so what I'm doing here, and the question is, I'm taking an idea from not just the context and situation, but also from the quotation itself. This idea that that of letting the divine Lord and his wisdom grant the victory to whichever side he sees fit, is, is Beowulf doing this in order to, allow God to make the call, or is he doing this to show his own strength, prowess, just, how awesome he is? And what makes this a discussion question is it's a moment of ambiguity. All right. It's a moment where there's potentially multiple explanations for what is happening here and why Beowulf is doing what he's doing. And they're not necessarily mutually exclusive either. Right. It's not necessarily just pride or just humility, and humility can also ironically, and a show of humility can also ironically also be an act of pride. When you're trying to show everybody how humble you are, that could actually, reflect, a moment of pride. So there's a lot that's interesting in this moment and in this quotation. And so what you're trying to do here is ask a question that forces us to discuss and interpret an ambiguity within the text. All right. What I don't want for the discussion questions, I do not want questions that require us to do research to answer. Okay. I don't want questions that involve our drawing on our personal experiences, that ask us about our personal experiences. I do want questions that ask us to discuss the text, and specifically the quotation you have chosen. All right. So, so the goal of the discussion is to discuss the text closely, in specifics, and to really break it down and analyze it. All right. So think carefully about the quotations you choose and make sure the quotation reflects what you want to ask about the text. But again, it should be asking us a question about the reading. The quality of the question is really determined by the extent to which it is going to impel us to discuss Beowulf and the moment in quotation you've chosen. All right. So, and I have some notes here on the citations. So I do want you to end with a works cited entry on Beowulf. Okay. Now, depending on what we're reading, the citations might change somewhat, or at least the formatting of the citations might change. So, for example, Beowulf, we do not have an author for Beowulf. All right. So Haney is providing the translation, but we do not have an author. So it's going to begin, we don't know who actually wrote Beowulf. So this works cited entry will actually begin with Beowulf, the title of the work. All right. Similarly, the in-text citation will also just give the title of the work because we don't have an author's name. All right. The in-text citation should always direct us to the beginning of the entry on the works cited page. So this is the beginning. This is our citation. All right. Now with poetry, we also want to cite lines and not page numbers. So the formatting here is going to be Beowulf, comma, lines, and then our line numbers. All right. And if both line numbers are in the hundreds and begin with the same digit, like 685 to 687, we drop the 6 for the second one. All right. So we just give the last two numbers in that case. When we get into works where we do know the authors, then that's going to be a little bit different. So like Lamval, which is what we're reading next week, we do have the author, Marie de France. All right, so you would begin that entry with de France, comma, Marie, and then the in-text citation would be de France, and then the line numbers. All right, so when you're doing the works cited, make sure you are getting the italics right. All right, so if you're referring to the title Beowulf, that title is in italics, it's not in quotation marks. All right, you are welcome to copy and paste from the instructions for the works cited entry. That's fine, but make sure that you, when you paste it, you put what's in italics in italics. All right, so if you copy and paste something into the discussion board, it, you know, the italics may not paste. All right, so it may just be plain print. Okay, so make sure if you do that, you go back in and fix the italics. Don't worry about the hanging indentation on the discussion board because that's actually kind of a pain. So I don't worry about that with the discussion board. You know, when we're doing official responses and more formal responses, then I will definitely want you to do the hanging indentation, but we'll get to that then. So again, this is what this is going to look like on your works cited, and to open the discussion board, again, you're just going to create a thread, all right, and come up with a title for your thread. And then once that's in there, then you can respond to 2 classmates. Your responses should be at least 50 words each. Okay, you know, try to find questions that you find particularly interesting. Okay, that you know, that you would like to try to discuss and try to interpret. Okay, one way to make it easy for you to scroll, and you know, we only have my posting in here right now, but if you click select all and then collect, what will happen is that you'll then get to see everybody, scroll down and read everybody's questions. So if there were multiple questions here, then you could keep scrolling down. All right, and in a lot of ways, that's an easier way to go through and pick out your questions as opposed to trying to do it just based on the title. Okay, so that's it for just the overview for this week. You know, I will be posting more information and more videos on Beowulf, and you know, a little later this week, you know, I'll also start talking about the response to Beowulf that you'll be writing next week. All right, but this week again, you've got the reading quizzes. You read Beowulf, do the reading quizzes, and then complete the discussion question assignment. All right, that's what is due for this week. Okay. All right, thank you for watching, and have a great week.